today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about men and emotions, and also it isn't just about showing emotions. I think for a lot of us, sometimes knowing what we're feeling may even be a challenge, right? Truthfully, there's thousands of feelings, but if you got to start with somewhere, start with as big food groups.
She says, I'm overwhelmed. In your mind, you finish the sentence because you're not doing enough.
Because you didn't make dinner tonight. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship, and John Schinnerer, the Evolved Caveman Podcast, and sponsor, speaker, leader, and author. He's back. He's on our show. And how are you, John? Actually, I know how John is. John is like, he's high on endorphins. So like if he goes wild, guys, just give him a pass on that or roll with it.
I'm doing great. It's a sunny day here. It's going to be 93 here. A little hot for me, but it should be absolutely beautiful. And I got a friend coming out to meet up with me tonight. His old college friend. Haven't seen him in, I don't know, a year or two. So I'm excited about that.
Guys can have friends?
Yes, we can. Although we tend to suck at repair when, we overstep because we're being humorous and sarcastic and, kind of giving each other a hard time. And then we overstep. We kind of suck at repairing those rifts.
Yeah, actually, I help a reporter out. It's back.
Haro. Yeah, is it really?
They got absorbed by some of the company, and they figured out that nobody was going to go look. So the emails are back. I mean, one of the things they said is something like somebody want to write an article about why men seem to have such a hard time having friends. Period. I was like, yeah, that's kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's an epidemic of loneliness. Yep. And I was talking with Daniel Ellenberg, and he's a psychologist and was head of the APA Division 51 Men and Masculinity section. And it was interesting. We were talking about, how men struggle with repairing after they screw up or overstep or insult their friends. And then it just kind of goes unrepaired or unaddressed, which festers. And it was interesting because later on in the conversation, I pseudo insulted him. I kind of insulted him, like he was talking about how he was disturbed as a teenager. And I started laughing because I knew I could play with him. And I was like, well, how disturbed are you now as an adult? And he kind of got serious. And he's like, there was a time in my life where that line would have destroyed me. And I was like, oh shit, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to, step on your toes and hurt your feelings. Like I'm really sorry. That wasn't my intention. So it was interesting to me because we talked about how we struggle with repair and apologizing. And then later on in the same interview, got a chance to implement it and illustrate how it's done.
Well, I sort of love in that moment, in that moment where he said, hey, by the way, you hit a soft spot there. You had the opportunity there to acknowledge that vulnerability and, all the feelings it brought up for you, right?
Yeah.
Or you could have just,
yeah, laughed it off, shined it on.
Right. And that's kind of what this episode is all about, folks. We're going to talk about men and emotions. And I think it's about also, it isn't just about showing emotions. I think for a lot of us, sometimes knowing what we're feeling may even be a challenge. And kudos to you that in that moment you saw, this could go different if I don't show that I care here.
Well, it was interesting to me because we had established we could play with each other early on, and that was one of the things that attracted me to him. We could tease, we could banter, we could have fun. But then I slightly overstepped, and I wasn't really sure if he was being serious or not, or how serious he was being. But, rather than assume he wasn't being serious and blow it off, I went with, well, maybe that did kind of hurt his feelings, and I apologized.
It's really interesting because I have a very good friend in my life. Somebody I've been, I guess I call him my BFF for like 7 years now, right? And every now and then I go back to my wife with something he said to me, and she says, I think he's a little hard on you. And I'm kind of like, really? And then I go, but because I'm pretty transparent, I go back to him and I went back and talked to him about it, and the way it was interesting because what she was listening as being hard was him being very direct with me, but he did it in a way that was gentle. It was about behavior of mine that wasn't like quite sitting right with him. And I went back to him with her remark, and I said, "It's interesting because I didn't. I just figure if you have a friend, real friends, will tell you when things are not quite right, either within yourself or in the relationship or both." And and so I don't take it as him being hard on me, but to her ears, it was like, wow, if one of my friends talked to me like that, I don't know what I would do with that.
Well, and I think I absolutely agree with you. I think a good friend will challenge us at times. And I think that one of the things I've realized in my 5th decade on the planet is I think we all need to get better at challenging as gently as possible, like challenging with emotional awareness and love and kindness and respect. Because I think for many years I could challenge, but it wasn't very subtle. It wasn't very gentle. And I think we run the risk if we challenge too harshly to be met with defensiveness and I don't know what else to call them, but like dead or tin ears. Like it bounces off the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like in order to be gentle, there's a level of self-awareness that needs to happen there, right? The whole experience of empathy or even compassion, of walking in their shoes or walking in their shoes with them, and which one you're going with, knowing what it's like to walk in their shoes versus walking in their shoes with them requires some awareness of our own sensitivities, our own vulnerabilities, our own, all those feelings that as men, we're often challenged to, or trained or taught or encouraged to avoid, right?
Yeah.
In order to have a connection with another human being, you need to be able to have sadness. You need to be able to have fear. You need to be able to have a hurt. You need to be able to have, I don't know what you call aloneness, feeling alone.
Loneliness. Yeah.
Loneliness. All those feelings that as guys, we're not really encouraged to talk about, much less experience in depth.
Well, and I mean, like
You need to have them to connect with another human being. And I feel like that sense what you're talking about comes from that.
and some of the research shows that the average person can only name 3 emotions in their body, which is happy, sad, mad. That's tragic.
Well, but no, there's actually 4.
Yeah, the other study I came across recently, I was going through like old blog posts of mine, and I wrote about a study in which I think it was like 62% of men would rather shock themselves with a mild electric shock than sit alone with their thoughts. That's staggering. I prefer paying or sitting and getting my own. What is it hooked up to is the question.
Button.
Was easy.
On a good day, I have the car battery hooked up to my nipples. On a bad day, it's somewhere else.
Yeah. All right. So that's, this is kind of what we're talking about, fellas, and ladies who are listening. We're talking about men and emotions. And this all started with, before I actually hit record, John was sharing that he had a thought that he wants to fluff into an article about the.
So wait. Does that mean that I'm your fluffer?
No, it means I'm your fluff. Yeah, much better with. I'm here, and you're going to write it before the podcast comes out. And it's like this is all your thing. John, tell everybody what you were talking about. You're talking about when you're going out for a walk, and you're thinking about the best thing that a man can do for a woman, for his female partner.
Yeah, for a partner.
The thing that a man can do for his male partner, if it's the same as honestly, the best thing, really thinking anyone that you're sitting with.
It's the best thing you could do for a coworker. It's the best thing you can do for a friend. Best thing you can do for a romantic partner, or one of the best things. I guess a little bit of hyperbole there, but one of the things that I think we do, and it kind of gets back to your point of empathy earlier, that the vast majority of us have a high degree of empathy, which is great in general. But we have to learn to protect ourselves from our own high degree of empathy, because otherwise we're walking around like a sponge, taking in other people's emotions all the time with very little awareness. And I remember I was like, 25. I was in the PhD program at Cal. I was doing some consulting work, and the person I was consulting with was like, 45, 50, and probably thinking, what the hell is this young kid doing here trying to tell me what to do? And I wasn't trying to tell him what to do. I was just asking questions and trying to gather information. But she was kind of a little bit rude and insulting, and it hurt my feelings. And so I took it back to my advisor at Cal, and this guy was a brilliant, gentle, just a great man, Meiji Singh. And I told him what happened. And he said, we make the mistake 95% of the time that thinking what other people say, do, and feel is about us, when in fact it's about 5%.
So
And
true.
that stayed with me for years. And I've thought about that a lot. And he's absolutely right. The next question is, what do you do about it? And I think one of the greatest things we can do for other people is, and this kind of, it stands upon, or it's founded upon, our own emotional self-awareness. If we don't have emotional self-awareness, this is going to be difficult, but you can learn that. But the best thing we can do to help out other people is when we're aware we're in a bad mood, because moods, there's a difference between emotions and moods. Emotions have a cause, they're time limited, and they're a little bit more intense than moods. So, bear comes out of the woods, you feel fear, you run away. And ideally, after about 3 minutes, give or take, the emotion should pass. So the bear is the cause, you feel fear, you run away. A mood, on the other hand, is kind of like emotion stretched thin over time. And so it's less intense generally. And the big difference is it doesn't have to have a cause. It may, like if you suffer a loss in your life, it's going to flatline your mood. Okay. But that doesn't happen very often. So typically our moods just go up and they go down without any doing from us. And, sometimes if your life is tough and you're struggling, like that makes things harder, sure. But our moods just kind of go up and down. And so to have the awareness of, oh my gosh, I woke up in a shitty mood, whether that's I'm bummed out and sad, I'm irritable and grouchy, I'm in pain, whatever it is, to have the awareness to say to your partner, to your coworkers, hey, I realized I woke up in kind of whatever it is, grouchy mood, sad mood, or I'm bummed out, or whatever it is, I'm in a shitty mood, and it has nothing to do with you. Because then that person has first of all, they don't have to take your mood personally, which is huge.
They're off the hook.
Yeah. And so they don't have to worry about, gee, what did I do to piss John off? What did I do to make him bummed out? Which is what we normally do. We take it personally. And then they can also, the next step is they can try and help you out, support you, or they can just give you space. Either one's fine. But at least they know what they're doing and why they're doing it. And, this really, as I said, it hinges on having that emotional self-awareness to realize, A, I'm out of sorts, and B, maybe this is just a mood without a cause. Because the other option is you wake up, you're irritable, and you've got a backlog of resentment with your wife, and you have a hard time disentangling that mood from what's currently going on with your wife.
Yeah.
And so another reason to clear out old resentments whenever possible.
And this sounds like such a simple thing, right? But there's so much to unpack here, right? And one of the things we were joking about in the beginning was, well, actually, you said it. Not even joking about the beginning. You said it just now. You said, how do you know it's a bad mood or not just, well, I'm going to add another constipation.
Yeah. Stomach ache. Yeah.
How do you know you just haven't had your coffee yet? And how do you know if it's not happy, is it necessarily bad? The question really is, how do you know that something's up? And I think a lot of humans, just throw gender out of it. A lot of humans get out of bed and they don't even think about what's the mood that they're in. You're just, I'm up. Well, first thing I'm going to do, go to the bathroom for 99% of us,
Mhm.
And next thing, I'm probably going to get a stimulant or something to eat, depending on where you come from.
Do you do cocaine that early? I usually wait till after 2 p.m. from
Brackish coffee, which is the next best. I'm not that any of a stimulant. Why even pay me for that post? But maybe I should approach them. Ads for them here on the podcast. It's a household staple at this point. I've got the whole house addicted.
Yeah.
So how do you, if you're not, how do you check in with yourself and know just what kind of mood you're in and know that it's not constipation or lack of coffee or anything else?
There's a couple of things to do. And I think some of this work is some of the most important work we can do in this lifetime, because it's increasing self-awareness. And self-awareness has two aspects to it that can be broken down further, but there's internal self-awareness, which is about, am I aware of what I feel? Am I aware of what I think? And am I aware of what I'm doing? And then there's external self-awareness, which is, am I aware of how what I do and who I show up as affects other people? And the problem with this is research shows that 95% of us will report being highly self-aware. And in fact, research shows it's about 12 to 15% of us. That's a huge effing problem. Because if we're all going around thinking, I know myself, I'm totally self-aware. I know what I feel. I know what I think. I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And you actually don't, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
And, so that's why I think that this is some of the best work you can do, because, I think we go through the illusion, or we have this illusion, that we're rational beings. We're not rational beings. I agree with Antonio Damasio, one of the greatest neuroscientists on the planet, who says, we are not thinking beings that feel, we are feeling beings that think. In other words, emotion is primary, it's more powerful, it's faster.
All the studies on why people buy anything show that it's an emotional decision that we rationalize after the fact to convince ourselves that we're making a rational decision. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And it happens in a
Right on.
split second. And the other thing that pisses me off about economics, at least until, 10, 20 years ago, is that we used to have the assumption that consumers were rational. We're the furthest thing from rational. We'll buy on an impulse or an emotion, and then within a third of a second, we construct a rationalization
I think those
to
guys
explain why we did what we did.
Those guys in advertising knew better. The guys who were putting little death images in the scotch bottle and stuff like that. They knew something else was going on. But yeah, I'm with you. So if you're listening to the show, let's say you're listening to the show and you think you're pretty you know what? Wow, that John, he's right. Thank God I'm not one of those people who think we do that. Where I'm by self-aware. First of all, how do we figure out where we are on that scale?
I think one of the first steps, and mainly I work with men, so this doesn't just apply to men, but what I tell my male clients is, get out of your head, stop over-identifying with the thinker, your thoughts, because that is not all you are. It's part of who you are. And Rene Descartes really screwed us when he said, I think, therefore I am, because he completely cut off head from body. And right now, some of the best research being done is in the mind-body connection, psychoneuroimmunology. And we cannot separate those two. They're inseparable. And so one of the ways to begin this is to get out of your head and put your attention into your body.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on in my body? Do a body scan. What's my heart rate doing? Where's my muscle tension? Where's the blood flowing in my body? What's my GI tract doing right now? Where's their tension? How's my jaw doing? How's my neck and shoulders doing? And there's a study that shows that one of the best ways you can begin to develop self-awareness, and I love this study, is to simply stop, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And do that 3 times a day. And you just kind of scan your body and see what physiological symptoms or cues you can come up with, and then try to connect those to a feeling. So for instance, my heart rate's going up, my chest is tight, I think I'm getting a little bit annoyed, that kind of thing. And the thing that's wonderful and crazy about this study is your answer doesn't matter. You don't even have to answer the question for it to have a benefit to you. All you have to do is practice pausing, taking a breath, scanning your body, asking, what am I feeling right now? And just wonder, just be curious. And that's one of the things I talk to a lot of men about also, kind of along these lines, is humility, the need that we have for humility. And it dovetails really nicely with that 95% of us that say we're highly self-aware, because it's a gross lack of humility. We think we know everything, or we're scared to look like we don't, which is how we're socialized. We don't even want to stop to ask for directions. The last place we want to do is go into the scary neighborhood that is my mind.
You don't have to ask for directions anymore.
That's true.
We got phones.
Google. Yeah.
Yeah. I missed getting lost. Well, so let me just speak to that a little. So I'm actually gonna build on what John just said. So this thing about it's beautiful. Stop and ask yourself what you're feeling. What am I feeling in my body? I want to give you some hints about, even though it may not be important to identify exactly what you're feeling, I'll give you some hints. If you think what you're feeling is that your wife is really a pain in the ass, that's not quite a feeling. It's not quite a feeling. It's close though. It's close. Or if you feel like maybe the world would be a better place if there weren't tariffs, that's getting close to a feeling. But I have a whole generation of clients who, when I say, well, what are you feeling right now? And they say, well, they talk about situations as feelings, because
Thoughts.
it's a pattern of speech now. If you're really stuck on feelings, there are actually four basics. But besides the three, there's mad, sad, glad, and then there's that one that nobody knows, which is afraid. Right?
Mhm.
But truthfully, there's thousands of feelings. But if you got to start with somewhere, start with as big food groups. Which box is the feeling fit in? Mad, sad, glad, or afraid? And every now and then you're going to go, well, it's not mad, it's not sad, it's not glad. Maybe it might be afraid. Maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, when I'm talking fear with people, I lump stress in there, anxiety, nervousness, dread.
Absolutely.
Like all those are fear-based emotions. And along the lines of what you're talking about, I'll recommend, like you can look up, those who are listening, you can look up online emotion wheel. Look up for a graphic of emotion wheel. There's a ton of them out there. And you start at the center and you can basically start good, bad, negative, positive. What am I feeling? And then you can go to those subgroups you talked about, angry, sad, mad, glad, or angry, sad, mad,
Mad, sad,
full, disgust.
there's
And
10
then
million combinations.
you can, like, let's say you're feeling anger, and then you can go using this emotion wheel, you can get greater and greater emotional granularity or distinctions into what it is you're feeling. And why is that important? It's important because we know from neuroimaging studies that if you can put the right label, the right word on what you're feeling, it reduces the intensity of it. And this is really handy for those uncomfortable emotions.
And it's interesting because part of what reduces the intensity is that you start to think about what the feeling is. And so it doesn't quite have you. The feeling doesn't quite have you the way it did. It's still present, but now you've taken a step back to look at what it is. But you still get to have the feeling is the thing.
Yeah, you're right. You're creating psychological.
Instead of I think, therefore I am, it's like I'm thinking so I can have the feeling. It's fascinating. And then I love the thing you said about humility. I think humility, actually, a personal experience with humility is I really have abused the crap out of it. If I were to, there was a time in my life where if I made this statement, I wouldn't have made it, but it would have been true for me. That is, I'm so humble. I'm proud of how humble I am today. All right. So, and somebody says to me, listen, it's like, this is what humility is. Humility is that you're teachable.
Mhm.
You just need to, if you don't empty the freaking cup, you can't fill it up. If you don't have room to learn, then then you think your cup is full. Something other than humility is taking its place. And that's the only way I could really get to that space, because otherwise I get all wrapped up in what humility looks like and what it means to act like being humble.
Yeah, I like the idea of humility being knowing all that you don't know, having an awareness of everything out there that you don't have a clue about. And there is so much. I mean, even the smartest people on this planet know maybe a fraction of a percent of what's out there.
Unless you have a podcast.
And then you know too.
And you're sorry.
Well, then we pretend like we know everything. Yeah,
Right.
for sure. But that's part of it. It's like and I remember being at Berkeley in my PhD program, and just like I was going a mile deep into this really narrow area. It was on optimistic bias, and realizing one of my classmates was going down a rabbit hole in a very similar area, and I didn't know any of the research that he was going into. There's just so much we don't know, and there's so much we don't know about ourselves and relationship and happiness and emotion. And to have curiosity about that. Curiosity is really one of the superpowers that we can begin to develop. And it's a choice. That's not, I guess you could say it's an emotion as well as a choice. But to strive to be curious about all that we don't know is a big deal.
Yeah, it's like a need to understand or something. I don't know. Curiosity is an interesting word. I want to go back to this thing of the bad mood and naming the emotion. So there you are. You get up in the morning and something's not right. You just know, and it's more than physical. You've had your coffee, you've been to the bathroom, and still something's not right. It's like the beginning of oh God, I can't remember the movie. The
Tell me about it.
huh?
What happened in it?
Oh God, it starts out with that song, "Having a Bad Day." Had a bad day with Gru. Had a bad. Well, Gru is in the background. Is this?
Oh, Despicable Me?
Despicable Me. It's like the first Despicable Me movie. He's having a great movie day, and he's in the huge car, and he's driving over people and crushing them, and he gets in and he cuts the coffee line, and it's like that. You cut the coffee, and you're still Gru before he adopts the children and becomes like connected to other people. You realize you're Gru, so you say to your partner, John, I'm Gru today. I'm really sorry. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just Gru. You know? And then what?
Well, then it gives them permission. When you say to your partner, like the other day, for example, I woke up and my back was really bugging me. And I've had spinal stenosis in the past, and I've had back surgery during COVID. And I'm already dealing with being blind in my left eye, which I'm kind of coming out of. But the back pain was nerve pain, and it made me, I was scared, right? I was like, I kind of went down a rabbit hole for a minute of, oh shit, I got to go get surgery again. I'm dealing with spinal stenosis again, which is the worst pain I've ever dealt with in my life. And it put me in kind of a bummed out mood. And so I realized that, and I told Jory, my partner, and I said, hey, honey, I just want to tell you, I'm in kind of a bummed out mood. My back's really hurting me, and it's not personal. It has nothing to do with you. And so then she has the option of trying to help me out, trying to support me, or just giving me space. No, I'm in a crummy mood, and it has nothing to do with her. And that allows her to go on with her day and get her stuff done, but she's not carrying the weight of what did I do to put him in a bad mood.
And also, to from the rest of the song. So I pulled up the lyrics. Despicable Me. It's, I'm having a bad day. It's about time that I get my way. Steamrolling whatever I see. Despicable Me. I think it's not only doing her a favor, but you're also, by acknowledging it, right? You don't steamroll whatever's in your path, and then blame them.
Right. We externalize our emotions. We displace our emotions all the time without awareness. And so to have the awareness and to say, hey, I'm in kind of a bummed out mood. I'm a little bit sad. I'm a little bit scared. It allows me to get through the mood more quickly, because otherwise what we're doing is we're suppressing it. We're pushing it down. And I'm telling you, that is the wrong way to deal with emotion or mood. Because if you suppress enough negative emotion, it will come back and bite you in the ass.
It comes out sideways.
And you will get, I mean, Aristotle said it really well. He said, the easiest thing to do is to get mad at the wrong person, in the wrong place, to the wrong degree at the wrong time. What's hard is to get mad at the right person, to the right degree, in the right manner, at the right time. And so if we think about that in terms of all of our emotions, and what are we sharing, and how are we sharing it, and who's it serving or who's it harming? Those are big thoughts.
Yeah. Well, the other part of this is, if you happen to be married to a woman and you go to her and say, honey, I'm having a bad day, watch out, because she's probably going to want to help you. I help you by helping you explain the emotion. And if you're really having a bad day, you may not want to.
Right. So you can draw a boundary.
Yeah.
Of, hey, I'm not available to talk right now. I just want to let you know where I'm at.
Yeah. Right. Really. And like, just be careful. I've actually had the experience of, wow, I'm having a bad day, and I'm on my way. I have something I got to go do. And my wife, she loves me. She says, oh, let's talk about it. Right. Because we're like, what she would do if she's having an emotion is she would just share that the crap out of that emotion.
Yeah.
Make sure I really got it. But that's not what I do. You know,
and I think that's partly based on gender, but it's partly based on our attachment style.
Yeah.
So I would argue, or I would guess, that the anxious attachment style wants to share it, wants to dissect it, wants to talk about it, and then connect.
The attachment style.
With the avoidance, like, I'll see you later. I'm going to do this on my own. I got to go take a nap.
Yeah.
I got to go. Just different styles. I mean, they're not, I don't know if there's anything wrong with those per se, with either of those, but to know that they're different, to know that they're attachment style based is a big deal in a relationship also. So you're not taking the other person's behavior or emotion personally.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of an extension to this. It's on the other side. I guess it's on the receiving side of the mood. But because we over personalize what other people feel, I think it's really important to train ourselves to take what other people feel less personally. Unless someone says to you, Rich, you're an asshole, you piss me off. if someone says to you directly, like, I got a problem with you, you did this is why I'm feeling this way. Okay, listen to that. But normally that's not the case. And so I love this idea of the depersonalization game where, like, let's say you get into an Uber and the Uber driver is noticeably annoyed. And your first thought is, what did I do to this fool to piss him off? Right? So I'm taking it personally immediately.
What did I do to this fool?
Well, that's typically what we do, right? The first knee-jerk reaction is, what did I do to cause this? But then you'll have that thought, but then the resilient recovery is to say, okay, let me play the depersonalization game. How can I explain his behavior, his emotional state, in a way that has nothing to do with me? So maybe he's concerned about competition from taxis. Maybe he got a flat tire today. Maybe he had an argument with his wife. Maybe he's worried about finances. Maybe he has a teenage son on drugs. Maybe his teenage son didn't come home last night. I mean, there's all these other possibilities.
He has been rated 1 star by every Uber driver
it's too early for that. That would be later. But I mean, just
no, they rate us.
Yes, true.
They rate the rider. So when he takes the rider, are you a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
But so it's training yourself to come up with other explanations for their behavior that don't have to do with you, to help you to take it less personally and to remind yourself that maybe what he's feeling, most likely what he's feeling, has nothing to do with me.
I actually had this experience the night before last. My wife came home and she said to me, she did this really well. I want to give her kudos here. She said to me, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. She had just made dinner. I had been working and she had made dinner we hadn't had an agreement about an advance. Her expectation had been that I was going to make dinner, I think. I'm not sure. I haven't gotten that part out of it. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I feel like I'm carrying everything. And I immediately started going through my checklist of all the things I do. Not verbally, though. Like, I had learned not to speak that, but I went through it mentally, and it was in that moment then she started saying, I know that you do but I just need you to know that I'm feeling this way. And
she did pretty well there.
Yeah, she did great. Like, she's very evolved. She's a very evolved cave woman.
Yes. Impressive.
And so then I thought, well, all the work I've done with couples, theoretically, what she wants to do is share the feeling. So I gave her the opening and she was like, well, I don't really know right now, which was interesting.
Sorry, which opening did you give her?
I said to her, so tell me more, what's the overwhelm about? And she says, I don't really know. And I had somebody else. I said, all right. Well, when I come back and, we'll talk, but there was an opportunity for me. I think maybe 5 years ago, that would have gone really differently. I would have started saying, well, A, B, C, D, E, and how could you say that to me? And I went and hooked up with some of the guys, and just connected with some of the guys. I realized, this is that thing that you and I are talking about now. This is that thing that you tell your clients all the time. It probably isn't even about you.
Right. Well, you make a really
this much is about you.
Because in that example, which I love, you had defensive thoughts, but you didn't make them defensive words. And that was well done on your part, because one of the things, again, you take what she's saying personally, like she says, I'm overwhelmed. In your mind, you finish the sentence because you're not doing enough.
Because you didn't make dinner tonight.
Right. And so there's an extension.
I made dinner last night. I made dinner last night.
All right, good job. But I think that idea of non-defensive listening is absolutely huge, because what we're trying to do, and this, is to allow our partner to speak what they're feeling and validate, listen to and validate how they're feeling. That's the first order of business. Nothing comes before that. Because if I don't feel seen, heard, and listened to, validated, we're not going to get anywhere.
Well, if you're a guy, you want to be understood, not just heard. But yeah,
right.
Guys want to be understood and respected. And this is what I was going.
But I think that we want our emotions to be seen, heard, and validated. And because that, to me, is the only way we can get those damn things out. To really, to share your anger with your loved one, and I'm talking, this is anger at them because of past resentments, annoyances, hurts. And when I say anger, I'm not talking throwing shit. I'm not talking punching holes in the walls. I'm not talking yelling or name calling. I'm just saying sharing your anger with them. And for your partner to say, wow, I can see why you're really upset. I'm really sorry about that. And that's it. that helps us to let go of that anger. And that's huge. That cannot be overstated. Now, if you have other contentions or ideas, or you want to explain what you were thinking or your intentions, that's a second conversation where you say, hey, can we go back to that, that evening where you were really upset with me and I just listened, and can I explain to you what I was thinking and what my intentions were there?
I want to add two pieces to that. This example I gave you, because I think there's so much to unpack there, and we need to wrap it up. So like the first thing is, just telling you the story, I'm realizing that she said, I know you do X, Y, and Z, because she sensed that I was having a defensive reaction, even though I didn't say it, right? And that's the thing I forget all the time, is that she reads micro expressions and body language so much better than I do, because that was a brilliant communication on her part, the way her brain is wired. And then the second part is that there is an ongoing conversation. I think if I had just said, well, when you know something, we'll talk, and we had never gone back to it, right, my relationship would be shakier, if not in trouble. So I think if you're hearing this and you're a guy, it's like not enough to just keep it in, even though you're going through all your defensive reaction. At some point, you're going to need to talk about, all right, let's talk about, what you're doing, what I'm doing, or whatever the thing, in this case, we talk about overwhelm, or let's talk about your overwhelm. Like, I know it isn't just this that's driving your overwhelm. You've got all this stuff out there, and, I can't really talk to you about that out there, but unless you want to, I'm here, and it might even look like demonstrating by making dinner last night. It was demonstrated through an act. I hear you. Mm-hmm. Not that I never make dinner, but but if I had not made dinner last night, there would have been a message in that too. So like what happens afterwards is really important. And I think for me as a guy, what I like to go is, well, I got through that one. Okay. And let's see what's next, when actually it isn't over. That's actually the beginning of a conversation. And it's not just a verbal conversation. It's a conversation of actions. It's a conversation of emotion. It's a conversation of actual words. And then there's how are you processing your own thing? Anything you want to add to that before we go?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because I think, when Jory and I went to see our couples counselor, they're a married couple, Charlie and Linda Bloom. Oh, Charlie said something very wise to us. And he said, because Jory was saying that there's times when I'm not finished. Like I still have some emotion about a disagreement that we had, and I want to go back and revisit it. And John, will roll his eyes and be like, oh, geez, again. And he said, if one of you is not complete, both of you are incomplete.
That's right.
Until you're both complete, you got to keep going. And I think one of the things that we've learned is to go back and revisit disagreements days later. And sometimes we'll revisit them 2, 3, 4, 5 times. But that's where the real change and growth happens, because then we can really look at, wow, why did I have that trigger? Was that really about us, or was it about my marriage in the past, or was that about my childhood? And because I really like that idea that if it's hysterical, it's historical. Which means that if you have an outsized emotional reaction in the present moment, you better look at what happened in the past, because it's more than likely about what happened in the past.
For sure. Well, this wasn't one of those moments, but yes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we've been talking about men and emotion. So for some of us, the starting point is just noticing what they are. For some of us, the next step is, once we start to know what they are, knowing when to act on them and when not to, and how to act on them. Like I love that quote from Aristotle, about the real challenge is when you're faced with, I think something like when you're faced with anger, a situation where anger is warranted, how to show the warranted amount of anger in a way that's appropriate. I don't think he's used those words, but that's how I translated it. I think there's so much in this, but the starting point is you got to know what the frick you're feeling before the feeling has you.
Right.
Like if you're, I used to drive around with a baseball bat. If you're pulling over to the side of the road and grabbing your baseball bat, the feeling has you.
Right. And there's one other thing that kind of enters into this before we wrap up, and that's this idea of an avoidant attachment style. And men represent 70% of the avoidant attachment styles out there. So heavily overrepresented with males. Why is that important? It's important because avoidants learn at a young age to disassociate from their emotions. Because difficult or challenging things happen at a young age, or your parents would make fun of or shame your emotions or yell at you, and you just realize it's better to just shut this stuff off. And what happens then is we don't remember the lousy stuff that happened in our childhood because we don't have access to our emotions, and we need the emotions to burn those memories into our brain. So then we talk to avoidance and they're like, no, my childhood is fine. I'm fine. No, it was perfect. It was great. And then we live in this fantasy that we don't have any emotions, when in fact, we still have our emotions. We've just left them behind. They didn't leave us. And it's not the best way to live true connection and happiness, because you've also cut yourself off from any possibility of happiness, joy, excitement, love, and so on.
Yep. Can't have the upper end feelings if you're not willing to have the other end of the spectrum.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Well, this has been my new friend, John Schinnerer, who one day I will meet in the flesh.
Thank you. Absolutely.
So much for coming on. It is always a pleasure. I enjoy you so much. And you can, where can people find you? It'll be in the name. It's so much better when you say it.
Absolutely. The podcast is The Evolved Caveman. There's a website, theevolvedcaveman.com. My coaching site is guidetoself.com. And then Jory and I do couples work at loveisn'tenough.net.
Nice. I didn't realize you did couples work together. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool because I see the man, she sees the woman, and then all four of us come together to do the couples work. So no one feels ganged up on. Everyone feels like they have someone in their corner.
I love that model.
And it's great. It's super effective.
I love that model. Oh, I've got envy. My wife is a divorce lawyer, though, so it's that.
Oh, yeah, it's a different dynamic.
That's going to work out.
I'm feeling to that.
So cool. Well, we'll talk about that another time. Thank you for coming on, and we'll see you.
Thanks, Rich.